Greetings all, welcome to Everything Borrowed, where we sit down to share stories and have conversations with entrepreneurs to artists and everyone in between. Today's episode is powered by Blake's Hard Cider, 100% fresh pressed, all natural and gluten-free, straight from our family's 75-year-old farm in Southeast Michigan. Find us in your local grocer or have Blake's direct ship to your home by visiting blakestore.com. Use promo code EverythingBorrowed to receive 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years of age. Please enjoy mindfully. What's up, gang? My guest today is Mike Musary, the superintendent of Armada Area Schools, or as the kids call them, SuperMuz. Mike has led Armada Area Schools to notoriety as being one of the most progressive school districts in the state. He and I discussed the state of education, teaching during a pandemic, its effects on our kids, and so much more. I want to thank Mike and all our educators out there for all you do. You truly are doing the most important work. Thank you. By the way, I wore my Armada Tiger gear.
Got my basketball shirt today.
I always thought that we did school wears pretty damn well, and Joe McDevitt always, at least I was on the basketball team growing up. He always kind of had, had a hand in that. But kind of jumping into it, how long have you been the superintendent of Armada Schools?
So I'm finishing up my 9th year as superintendent,
and
next month I'll hit my 25-year anniversary in the district. I started out as the assistant superintendent of business and operations.
Business and operations. And would you say that, being a superintendent is actually like just kind of being the CEO of the schools?
100%.
100%, right?
Right.
I don't think people think about it that way, and I don't think I started thinking about it that way until I'm sitting on our school board.
Right.
And, you're going through budgets just like we do. You're having conversations about,
Well, people don't realize that 96% of the businesses in the United States have $1 million revenue or less. Mm-hmm. Schools have, our budget's $20 million, so we're big business.
Yeah.
I mean, we are a business.
Yeah.
And we have to look at it that way to make everything happen.
Yeah, and one of the things that I thought that was really interesting in my short experience of being on the board and watching you navigate the environment, and take COVID out of it for a minute, because that kind of is a whole separate world in which you're navigating. But you're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with raises and pay increases, and one of the reasons I got involved in the school board was because I'm starting to raise a family in this area, and I feel like Armada Schools really did a lot for me as far as my upbringing and my education. And I think we were blessed to have amazing teachers, and I always was like, well, how do they get compensated? How do you make the good ones get paid more? And so I really just wanted to get involved to learn more about education in general. And what would you say the environment of public education, how has it changed over the last 15, 20 years? And I know it's unique in its challenges right now, but I'm just curious what that evolution's been like.
Well, the evolution has been kind of interesting. I would say back when you were a student, teachers were put on a little higher platform. Then they became attacked. Then we wanted to look at all their evaluations. Then we wanted to make everything public. Mm-hmm. But during COVID, the teaching profession has been lifted back up again, mm-hmm. because teachers are our heroes now. Mm-hmm. For what we have asked them to do to meet face to face with most of our children, mm-hmm. during a pandemic, mm-hmm. has been unimaginable. But in Armada, it's been a huge success.
Yeah, and one of the things that I'm super proud of, getting into kind of Armada, schools specifically is, as it relates to our testing and, kind of our can you talk about some of the stats that Armada's kind of had over the years? Because I think, that's an indication of the type of teachers we have, in Armada, and obviously with your leadership, but there's been a lot of progress as far as where we were and where we're at now on a state platform.
Yeah. So I took over superintendent July of 2012. The first thing I asked to my administrative staff is, who are we? Mm-hmm. What do we want to be, and how are we going to get there? Mm-hmm. So we kind of did a deep look. So in 2009, 44% of our kids were going on to secondary education of some sort.
How many? 44%.
44%. In 2009. Now, over 90% of our kids go on to college. Now, what we consider college is two-year college, 4-year university, or trade school. We want to emphasize that trade school is a viable option for students these days because there's so much demand for that type of employee. So we want we want to kind of glorify it, to tell you the truth, so we can include that in our college numbers. But, statistically, our kids do very well. They have something called the All Macomb All Academic Team. Mm-hmm. What that is 50% of your SAT score is combined with 50% of your GPA. And students, it's not, you don't get allocated by how many students are in your district. It's who makes this cutoff. Mm-hmm. And Armada, out of the 21 school districts and 28 high schools, has led this county for, I think, 3 or 4 straight years. Typically, we have 10 to 14 kids that make the all academic. A couple years ago, we had a boy missed one question on the SAT, got a 1590. So that,
Yeah, right. That's impressive. And so when you think about, being a CEO of a school, superintendent of a school, and that's you're aspiring to produce results like that, and what's the secret sauce? How does that actually happen? With when you're taking, you're molding minds and and educating, and you're doing it through so many different years and iterations, ultimately to surmise to this test, that ultimately schools are graded on. And I think then funded by I mean that to some degree.
I can get into the funding formula, but my secret sauce. First of all, you need a school board, you need administration, you need staff, you need students, parents, and the community all on the same page. Mm-hmm. And I think we are for the most part. And we have a culture where if there are issues, we can talk about it and not feel bad about it.
Mm-hmm. So, one of the things I think that was highlighted was, our unique experience with COVID in Armada schools, because I didn't know this before getting on the board, but what percentage? It was some insane percentage of our kids, couldn't effectively study from home because we're rural, and
25% of our families do not have internet at home at all. Period. And then there's probably another 10 to 20% that have spotty type.
It's
service.
Here at the farm. I'll be on like a business call, and it'll just cut out and be like, sorry, we got Armada.
When we were having virtual board meetings, we would have board members that couldn't join. They had to call in because they didn't have the service.
So crazy. So that's a unique challenge for our area.
It's been a challenge for our area, but it's worked out in the end. We actually tried hotspots even in our community, and only 7 out of 10 of them worked.
Really?
We couldn't even get hotspots to work.
So how did you guys address that problem? And talk to me a little bit about, because one of the things I felt that I sensed from the community, that the community was very positive with the stance you took about, in-person learning, doing it safely, hearing concerns, setting up, flex schedules, things of that nature. So how did you really take all that, given our unique challenge?
Yeah, it was really interesting. We did a lot of surveying. The governor shut us down March 8th for the rest of the school year, basically. Mm-hmm. In May, we sent a survey to parents. Mm-hmm. How many of you would like to come have your children face-to-face? And 99% said they wanted to come face-to-face. Now, we did that same survey, say July, and it went down to 79%.
Okay, so
because people were saying this is a real thing. Mm-hmm. So we then developed 2 options, and most school districts did too. 2 options. One was face-to-face. The second one was virtual. And first trimester, 79% of our students showed up face-to-face. We have a lot of different protocols, safety protocols. We take their temperature. They have to wear a mask. Can't eat lunch in the cafeteria.
Where do they eat lunch?
They eat in their classroom.
Interesting. So,
and that's K through 12.
Okay. And so when you talk about the group that's going on to virtual learning, I think there's statistics coming out now, but it seems like there's certain age groups, whether it's the elementary group, the middle school group, the high school group, that do better with this virtual learning kind of platform,
right?
And others that struggle. So can you talk me through what we're kind of seeing from the age,
If you look at it nationally, the older students do better, because they're able to adapt. The younger students, especially early elementary that haven't gone to school, they struggle. I mean, if I could take you to a Zoom call with 20 some kindergartners just to take attendance, it's sometimes challenging. I mean, at the beginning, you had the dogs barking, you had moms trying to figure out how to help their students. I mean, there was all those technical challenges we had to get through too, just to get to where we're at.
Right. Oh, that's insane. So they were doing, I guess this is such an ignorant question, but I mean, they were doing like first grade classes online? Like,
We still are.
and so, I mean, how much, that has to be like full parent involvement as well, right? I mean, it's kind of like
A lot of work on parents.
Mm-hmm.
In Armada, we have 6 virtual classes, 1 per grade. So kindergarten through 5th, we have a dedicated teacher, and then we have students that have opted. And it worked out where the percentage was pretty close to each grade, so we were able to do that.
Okay, interesting.
So I would say that number increased slightly. We went from 79% face-to-face to 85% second trimester, and we're just starting third trimester, and it's going to go to about 87% face-to-face.
Okay, interesting. And is that a different position than a lot of schools have taken? And how is that, what is, I guess my question is, what are the different, approaches schools are taking? And, is it all kind of is it kind of out of the box from the governor, kind of here's what you're allowed to do, and how much is it really crafted at the individual community level?
Well, the instruction delivery is crafted by each school district. There are some districts in this state that may not go to face-to-face the entire school year. I believe we are the only district in the Tri-County area that has been able to maintain face-to-face learning for the entire school year. Now, the governor shut us down for 5 weeks after Thanksgiving for the pause.
Yep.
And that's kind of another interesting story that I can share with the number of COVID cases.
Yeah.
But
Well, please do. I'm
okay, so we actually just went 3 consecutive weeks without a COVID case. This week we had 2 high school students test positive. Mm-hmm. For the entire school year, we've had 44 students test positive for COVID. So that's 2.4% of our school population.
Yes.
During the pause, when the high school kids were at home, we had 11 students test positive. So 25% of our cases were during the pause.
What?
I mean, that's because they were gathering at home.
Yeah, right, right.
When we have them at school, they're wearing a mask, they're social distancing, we're keeping them safe.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you guys for doing that. And, I just have to imagine that, it's hard enough, when you're dealing with so many parents and so many kids coming from so many different places in life, and to navigate that, but then you throw COVID and the different various levels of concern by different individuals. I have to imagine that is just a challenge, extremely unique. And I couldn't even imagine that challenge. The luxury we have as being entrepreneurs and business owners in non-public schools is, we're dealing with adults mostly, and you're not dealing with kids in this capacity. So that has to be just such a unique and sensitive time. So can you talk a little bit about, the way in which you've kind of engaged communicating? Because I think you've done a very good job of being present and kind of on the forefront of a lot of that.
So first of all, typically the positive cases of students will mirror the community. So our challenge was, we have 500 students from 20 different school districts. I can't monitor that.
Yeah.
Can't monitor. It's just impossible to monitor that data. So we just have to take care of our own.
And why do people come from so many different areas?
Because of our academic programs.
We're just good.
We're top notch. We've been #1 in the county 3 straight years at the high school level in the Michigan accountability system. So. We've got a reputation.
Congratulations, by the way. That's huge.
Thank you. Yeah. And our students do well. We offer, for our district our size, we offer a lot of different opportunities for students. We're a family setting, so we're not overwhelming for some students, and some students want that. When I first started here, nobody would come to Armada from, say, a Romeo, a bigger district. But now we have quite a few. They just want that type of setting.
Interesting. So you were saying that, in management of the COVID, kind of scenario, you have so many different communities that you're trying to, so that goes out the window, right?
It's kind of hard to monitor that, but we do monitor our kids and who they're with and when they're with us.
Yeah. And, I don't think this I never get a perspective on this. I don't have kids and I'm not, there yet, but what is there a general kid sentiment, as far as this whole thing? Would they rather be, in person? And because I do feel that, based on the science, that they're, they're being affected more than maybe they should be based on how it actually affects them, So I'm just curious what the sentiment of kids seems to be within at least our school district.
I think what people have, I'm not going to point fingers at anybody at a government level, but what they ignore is the social, emotional importance of what's going on with the student. We cannot keep certain students at home for that long period of time. Mm-hmm. So when they came back in the fall, it was like a weight was lifted off their shoulders. Our students want to be here. Mm-hmm. So I have I have two committees. I have a middle school student advisory committee, and I have a high school student advisory committee, and they tell me how they feel. I can't tell you what they tell me because what stays in our meetings, kind of like vague.
Right,
no,
right.
But no, seriously. But they want to be in school.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting point. I think it gets lost on some people and all of us at times that school is an outlet for people who, maybe don't have, things aren't aligning at the home front. And that, I think it's a safe haven for a lot of people. It's a community aspect. It's friendship. It's camaraderie. It's all those sorts of things that you hope people are getting at the home. But, that's not always the case, unfortunately. And schools can be that. So I just imagine that.
Right, and during the pandemic when we were closed, we were still feeding families in need. That was important. Mm-hmm. And in Armada, we chose to have our buses drive the food to the families. Now they're
shit.
Yes, so now
that's cool.
Now they during the school year, now that we're face to face, they'll have a Wednesday pickup. The virtual students that don't have an opportunity to get the meals, they'll get 5 meals on a Wednesday, and they'll take them home to their kids.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
And the lunches are free this year. I don't know if you knew that either.
I didn't.
The government, no students are not paying for lunches this year.
Well, that's good.
So we're feeding them breakfast and lunch now.
That's great.
It is great.
What are some of the things, we can talk how this has affected so many people in so many negative ways, and we all, understand that. But I have to imagine, I know that from a Blake's perspective and some of the things we've learned from ourselves in navigating and transitioning to prepare and work through COVID is probably fundamentally changing some of the things we'll do in the future.
Right.
Even as things come back to normal 100%. So what are some of those kind of takeaways from an education perspective, classroom, I guess engagement, all of those sorts of things? What's kind of the takeaway?
Well, I guess at the elementary levels, certain things like social distancing at times, washing of the hands, that sort of thing. That's going to be here to stay. I mean, we did a pretty good job of it before, but now we're a little more cognizant of that sort of thing. Now, at the middle school and high school level in Armada, we did something called A and B weeks. So right now, the secondary students for 2 weeks, they'll take 3 classes basically for 2 hours. When you were here, you took 6 classes for basically an hour each day,
yep.
Right? Yep. So now the kids for 2 weeks, they'll take an A week where they're taking 3 classes for 2 hours, and B week, the next 2 weeks, they're taking, classes 4, 5, and 6. So, and the reason we did that was to basically segregate them from the entire population for 2 weeks, which mitigated the COVID
pressure. Nice. And is that a unique approach to that Armada? Or is a lot of schools taking that, or what? What's
it's pretty unique to Armada. Really? Some people have the block schedules, which is a little different.
Yep.
But we came up with this schedule to keep kids safe. And now we're already talking about maybe keeping that.
Really?
So
are you finding that? I mean, I would kind of imagine it's like you're more focused in more of in a period of time as opposed to scattered throughout the day and just going from one to the next. And
so when you get into a class, it usually takes 5 to 7 minutes just to do attendance, get yourself going, right?
Right.
But now what we're finding is we can really do a science lab. The music teachers are really happy because they can really get into the music and dig deeper.
Yeah.
And same with all the subjects, really.
Yeah.
So that you can do a little deeper dive. And if we do it in the future, I would probably do it in 1 week blocks, so instead of the 2.
Yep.
But it also, when you're at finals week for a high school student, there's less pressure to do 3 finals 1 week and then do 3 finals the next week.
Yeah, so, I think that's...
So there's pros and cons. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But some of those things we're already talking about continuing.
That's great. One of the things I wanted to ask you was, and it might be my own biases of kind of how I see things going. But I felt like, college to some degree has lost its shine. not in what you could get out of it, but I don't think it has the same, call it return on investment that it used to have for every child, every individual. Right. I think going to college at one point meant X.
Right.
Now I think it could mean just this step function change in where you're going to be and at in your life, or it could mean a lot of debt, bad habits, and gaining 30 pounds hanging out, playing video games when you should be studying. And I guess my question is what are things at the high school level and at the public school level that are changing to kind of help kids find their right path? The other thing I always thought of, like when I went to school, it was 18. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. Who does? How could you? And it's like you're throwing kids in to make a commitment before they've had the self-reflective. I mean, they're just trying to be, win a sports game, get an A on a test, go to prom with their girlfriend. They're just starting to like really experience life. And it's like, okay, sign on the dotted line for 50 grand in debt and tell us what you want to do. And so I think to the degree in which we could help, coach and kind of, get more directionally correct individual students, future plans, it's probably going to help them in the long run. And I guess I'm just curious if there's things that are happening, at that, at the level of, probably middle school up to really start that planning and how we can be more helpful to our kids.
Well, there are. And interesting enough, in 2016, we went through a strategic plan for the first time. Mm-hmm. So it's a 5-year plan. But one of the things that came out of it is exactly what you're saying. Mm-hmm. We want the kids to be introduced to more real-world scenarios, real-world businesses. So we introduce concepts at the elementary level, and we also have changed our curriculum at the middle school level to introduce things like building trades, theater, culinary arts, other thing than your 4 cores.
Yeah,
and then
that.
At the high school, we're actually starting. There's things like manufacturing day, where you take students and meet hundreds of business people. Mm-hmm. And then we're also taking kids out to, say, a Michigan CAT, or to see what other things there are besides college. And, these trade schools will pay 100% of their tuition and pay you money while you work. So there's some really, you talk about debt-free, you're getting money, and you're going to have a nice job at the end, too. So, I mean, we're doing more and more of that. We added the building trades wing at the high school. We've added culinary arts.
Working on an entrepreneurial track, right?
Yeah, we are. We are.
I have a dog in that fight, and if I could, to the degree that I'll be transparent about, one of the reasons I'm on the school board is to help see that through, in whatever capacity we can. But I always kind of said that there's a difference between school and education, and we best not mince the two, because I feel that I learned to learn in school. But and so I feel like I got an education in that way. But I don't think I really maximized my schooling, if you will. But to me, they're not the same. And I see so many of my friends that I went to school with now, going on their 3rd decade, still paying for school debt. And I'm like, in this modern world, schools should be teaching to learn and to be self-taught and curious and all of those sorts of things. And, it's not just about the degree so you can get the job. And, and I think the world's changing in that manner. But I do think that, call it luck or whatever, I kind of got to learn that through, the teachers and the curriculum we had at school. And even I remember what my mom says, the reason I can't spell is because apparently at the time there was this program going on. I forget what it was called, but it was to entice kids to not worry about the individual spelling of words, to not hinder creativity of thought, and not get worked up on the individual spelling, but let ideas come. And I think that actually worked in a way. My spelling at times can be shit, but I do believe it kind of helped on some of those thinkings. And I know that there's unique tracks that schools can sign up for in these, kind of, I guess testing phases of, new education. And what are some of those things on the forefront, those concepts of education, and which ones are Armada leaning into or not?
Well, first of all, so we changed a few things. the specials that you had.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking
Is
about.
that a thing? Like, I couldn't. There's a name for it. My mom always calls it something, but it was something they were doing at the early like when you were just learning to write.
Well,
And anyways, that's what my mom says is the reason why.
do you know
I'm
cursive? Can you sign your name?
I can sign my name in cursive, and that's about it.
Yeah. So I mean, that thing's kind of died down. But what we found at the elementary level is we added a special called technology, and kindergarten through 5th grade, one of their specials is technology. And the reason we stumbled onto this is we're required to do standardized testing on computers, right? The first thing we learned, because we were a pilot school, is some of the kids didn't know the keyboards, they didn't know the mouse.
Yeah.
I mean, they struggled on the exam just because they can't get through that.
Right.
So now that we're teaching elementary kids that piece, although you can hit spell check, they at least know how to navigate a Chromebook or a small computer.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's just one of the things. And we're moving. You probably went to kindergarten for a half a day, right? Did you go a half?
Yeah, I think it was a half
So
day.
now kindergartners go to school full day.
Okay.
So that should mean they're learning twice as much. Mm-hmm. So the curriculum should move, right? Mm-hmm. You should be teaching a little more advanced each year. So what we've done in Armada is, if you're accelerating in, say, math in elementary, you might just walk across the street and go to 6th grade math or 7th grade math. You can do that.
Really?
We do that.
So
it's not uncommon.
I think that's great because, the other thing is that's interesting is people excel in different areas. And one of the things that we focus on at, work here is, this self-awareness of your strengths and weaknesses, and obviously trying to shore up your weaknesses, but kind of investing fully in your strengths. Said another way, you can't always take someone's strengths and be like, okay, you have to be that good at everything. That's a bad use of time and of energy and is more frustrating to the individual. What can you do to really lean into that child or that individual's unique skill set and help amplify that while maybe rounding out the other things? And that's one of the things we look at work here is I'm not going to try to turn someone who's super creative into a great manager of people if that's not what their ultimately highest and best use of their time is. And
so at the high school level, we require them to do a 2-year career pathway. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, some kids didn't play school well, right? But they might have found, say, the arts their thing. Mm-hmm. And so we've created that pathway, and some of our students each year will probably average over $1 million in scholarships just in theater alone.
Say that again? $1 million?
$1 million.
That kids get from our...
They'll get full rise to university for theater.
We have a good theater program, though.
We have a great theater program.
And a great music program.
We've got a lot of great programs, okay?
We do.
We just do. And first of all, you get that by hiring great staff, and we have great staff. Mm-hmm. So that's how it all, and we're moving everything forward. So if you're in middle school, you want to take some of your high school credits like foreign language, you can take high school foreign language now. Mm-hmm. Or Algebra 1. You can take a high school Algebra 1 at the middle school level. So we're moving things. So once they get to the high school, they can have more career pathways. Me, for instance, I was kind of like you. When I went to college, I didn't really know what I wanted. I was in pre-dentistry. Why? Because they golfed on Wednesdays. So, but I changed majors 3 times in college.
Right.
So we're trying to at least expose them to different things so they don't have to change their major and they find an interest before they go to college.
Right.
If they go to college.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I always said there's in a weird way, something to a pause year, after high school, and it's or a half a year where you're you're really trying to just self-reflect and figure out what that, because that's the next, it's just so weird, life has a lot of momentum to it, and it's you get into school, then the next thing you know, you're kind of on this path, then you're I don't want to get out of that path.
So if you're talking about debt earlier.
Yeah.
We're trying to eliminate college debt, too, for our students. So typically, a student on a college prep sequence will graduate with close to 20 college credits from Armada.
That's insane. I had 0.
I know. So
That's
we did
great.
a partnership with Ferris State where you can take pre-calculus and then an English class where you can earn 14 credits, 7 in pre-calc and I believe 7 in English. So you get 14 credits there, and then we offer the APs, and if you get 3, 4s, or 5s in the APs, you'll get college credit as well.
That's great.
So that's, some of our kids are starting as sophomores in college, which
That's huge. That's
1 year of debt
tuition,
gone.
right?
So,
well, good work. I was curious a little bit on your opinion on, teacher compensation and how that we solve that in the long term. Said differently, I can't imagine a public service that is actually, they talk politicians, public servants, bullshit, not really. But like, I do believe education in kind of some of the truest form is true, public servant, work. And, to attract talented and capable people that are ultimately raising our youth and our kids, it seems like that would be good money spent. It's not like we're not getting taxed already. It seems like that would be an area to focus on that. And I've always said I have a lot of friends who wanted to be in education, that, the deal that teachers have now is different than the deal they had even 20 years ago, and that's becoming disincentive to a degree to some people in some school districts. So what's like is there a macro fix for this from a government level, a federal government level, state level? What is the solution to that problem, or is it more individualized and more
I think it boils down to a state problem, because the federal government's not going to dictate how to do public education. They're going to support and provide certain resources, but each state ultimately has to say, this is how much pot of money we get, or this is how much pot of money we want to raise with our taxes, and then this is what we're going to do with it. Mm-hmm. The local states are going to have to say, we need education to be at the forefront. We need it to be important, and we need to fund it.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
And are there certain states that are taking more of a leadership, tip of the spear role of that?
Yeah, well, what's interesting, if you go back 30 years, so everybody compares us to us being Michigan.
Yeah.
We're not in the top 10%, as you know. We're probably closer to the bottom 10% out of the 50. But they compare us to, say, a Massachusetts. 30 years ago, we were right there educationally with Massachusetts, and we both had the same funding. Mm-hmm. 30 years later, Michigan doesn't have the funding, and now we have the test scores to prove it. So what's important to you? It's not that test scores are the ultimate be-all, right? Mm-hmm. But it does give you some indication. I mean, if you're going to compare state to state, that's the only way you can do it.
Right.
But it all comes down to funding. And I keep saying our business, education is a business, cannot sustain continued pay freezes and pay cuts for teachers, because, like we've talked, you've got 4 to 5 years of debt of college. If you go to your favorite school over there in East Lansing, you have to go to school for 5 years to be a teacher, right?
Yeah.
They're voted number 1 in the country.
Yeah.
But there's a cost to that.
Right.
And so when you get that five-year degree, we're going to pay you $40,000. Now, have you paid more than $40,000 to go to college? Of course you have.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I mean, we just have to say education is important. Mm-hmm. And we have to fund it, but it's not that easy.
Right. No, and it never is. Yeah, and I'm just curious, if there's different philosophies. I'm a novice in my understanding, of public education, but I'm interested. And are there different ways in which different countries or places in the world view public education, or is this kind of a problem across the board? And I guess I'm just curious. It seems like there's not a solution that I know of to this problem, and I feel like someone should have one somewhere.
I mean, there's so many different dynamics.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go to certain countries, say like a Singapore, their students might go to school 230 days out of the school year compared to our 180.
Right.
They might go 50 more days.
Right.
But how is their social, emotional, from doing all that?
Right. Right. Well, talk about that a little bit, because I think that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think I could at a certain in my most hippie of days, I could have said,
"You're a baby. You're not a hippie."
Yeah. When I was in my most, I guess, in a certain time in my life, I guess I could have said that, school really, its main job is socialization and friendships and community kind of development. And the education piece is a nice aside because at some level, the degree at which the family, the community, and the individual focus on education is the education you'll get. You know, you can have all the right stuff there, but, you know, you need to learn that through, you know, whatever, the hierarchy of having a teacher you have to respect and friends that you have to work with and play with and learn to not like punch the kid because he stole your lunchbox. You know what I'm saying? Like all those like human development things. And it just seems like it's such an incremental thing. You know, and I guess I'm just curious, you know, that seems to be, you know, as much a part of the school experience as anything. And it's kind of not measurable, but it's real. It
is real. And that's one nice thing about Armada. We're a big family. We when we went through went through strategic planning, we came up with the term One Armada. For instance, did you go to the new elementary? I call it the new elementary.
I was the first. I was a fifth grader, and the first year was open.
Okay, so when you opened, it was later elementary and early elementary, and each wing had their own principal.
Yeah.
Right? It was like 2 schools under one roof. So we tore that wall down and we made it one school district, and we're trying to interconnect our entire district. For instance, we'll take teachers, when pre-COVID, elementary teachers would go into high school classrooms and we'd visit to see what they're doing, and vice versa. High school teachers would go into elementary and middle school, and so we're all connected and we see what each level is doing.
I like that.
So sometimes education has been punitive by the way of typical tests. So I'm going to give you an exam, and you get 80%. We now
Seems about right for me with most tests.
That's good. I mean, let's go 60%.
Yeah. Well, that's
you were Game Boying the night before.
Yeah.
And whatever you did. Anyway.
Pokemon.
Oh yeah, Pokemon. My boys love that too. Yeah. Anyway, so you got 60%, and then the next kid got 90. Well, maybe because of what you were doing, you know, you lost focus. So we're going to punish you and give you a bad grade. Now what we do is, all right, you screwed up. We're going to let you study. We're going to let you take that exam over, and you're going to get 100%. You can get up to 100%. Now you've actually probably learned the material. But when we did that a few years ago, if you've been teaching the same way for 20 years, that's not right. Students shouldn't be able to make up. But
tough love.
Yeah, tough love. They got to learn. When they go to college, they can't make this up.
Yeah.
But we're in the business of educating. Did you learn something?
Yeah.
How we get there might differ than how we used to get there. So we just have to break down certain walls sometimes. That's just one minor way to do it.
I like that. No, it's a good point, because I think that you hate to disincentivize and, you know, disenfranchise a kid at a young age because of a grade. In the whole scheme of things, I can't tell you one grade I got in one class and anything I ever did. What I can tell you is I learned a lot. I remember a lot of experiences. Yeah. I feel like I took away lessons that I apply still to this day in life. But
and sometimes in the old setting, grades were 0 to 100.
Yeah.
Now we do 1, 2, 3, 4, just like your GPA in college, right?
Yeah.
So if you didn't take a test or got a 0, and then on the next exam got a 4 or 100%, you're at 50. You're failing, right? 50%. You're failing. But if you do it now on the 0, if you got a 0 and a 4, you got a 2.
Yeah.
That's now C.
Right.
Just that minor math switch alone.
Yeah.
Will give somebody who screwed up hope. Because if you can't make up 100 points, you're just going to quit.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean,
how much do you see as the whole experience of full, individual and child development? How much of it do you see as, how much do athletics play into it? How much does extracurriculars play into it? And how is there any way of measuring that? Like, do schools look at like full? What am I trying to say? Like engagement beyond just the test scores, I guess, is my question. Or is it more of, we know that these things are a big part of it, and do schools measure all the extracurricular engagement and track that on how that plays into other things?
We look at the whole child, but
You can't really,
to
right?
quantify that, it's near impossible.
Right, I imagine
But
so.
you want to offer you want engagement.
Yes.
So you want all students engaged.
Mm-hmm.
I was one of the first districts, there were 7 of us in the state, that started a clay target league. So it's trap shooting. And
I love that you guys do that, by the way.
and
It's awesome.
And
So cool.
you want that segment of kids involved in something very positive.
Mm-hmm.
And when we first did it, they were saying that you can't do that. You can't have kids with guns. I said, most of our students hunt responsibly. Why not teach them how to do certain things responsibly? And I also told the school board at that time, if we do this, we're going to get more kids on that than our football team. And I was correct.
Yeah, I know parents of kids who work here who their daughters are on it and absolutely love it. And what a great way to create responsible children around a very serious and an important thing to take serious. And
But so we have fishing clubs, we have buck poles. I mean, we just have different things for different students. And sure, we have the quiz bowls and athletics and
yeah,
the music. We tried to offer as much to reach every student.
I love that. Well, I from afar, I've always been a huge fan of everything Armada's been doing, and thank you for taking it personally and doing the job you do, and all the teachers. They growing up in Armada, they said it takes a village to raise a family. And I do believe that is there's an essence of that, and I believe that we get that anymore. That village mentality is still real present at the school systems, and I just hope. During all of the COVID transitions that, we don't lose a part of that because it's such a big, important part for children.
Right.
I believe.
The worst thing about COVID is we can't have parents in the building to help our classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been a big part of our success.
Yeah.
Parent volunteers have made this thing click.
Yeah.
And without that, it's been a little bit of a struggle. We're able to get by, but we can't wait till that happens again.
Yeah. Well, I think good news is on the horizon, and thanks for everything that you do. If people want to stay up to date with, what you have going on, at Armada Schools, or just learn more about, what we offer in Armada, or follow what's going on there, what's their best way to do that?
Well, probably our website, armadaschools.org.
Yeah.
So www.
Yeah. Or follow Superintendent.
SuperMuz at Armada Schools. He'll tweet some silly things now and then. It's really interesting read during snow day time, but
yeah, that's hilarious. I love that you've been doing that, embracing the social media age. Well, Mike, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing how we can't get a entrepreneurial track going within the school sector.
Good.
I think that would be exciting to open up kids possibilities of what that could be for them. So
right.
We'll work more on that in the years to come. But thanks for coming out.
All right, Andrew, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find Everything Borrowed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Show your support and drop a 5-star review to help more people find our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox, Jason Brown, and Vox Adams. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is by Adam Yarborough. Everything Borrowed is an after-hours media production. Copyright 2021.